Evan planted his palm over the brass lock just as I reached for it. Behind him, through the glass doors of the Marigold house, his mother lifted a pair of ceremonial scissors. Green satin stretched across the entrance. The pendant lights I had chosen glowed above every Mercer cousin Celeste could fit into one room. "You changed the lock," I said. His eyes dropped to the brass key hanging from the faded green ribbon around my wrist. "We'll talk later." "Why am I outside?" His mother raised the scissors, cameras tilted toward her. "Family only," Evan said, while she cut the ribbon. Champagne rose behind the glass. Celeste kissed his cheek. Then City Inspector Martin Hale opened the permit displayed beside the door, reread one name, and looked directly at me. He walked past them toward me. "Ms. Rowan," he said, holding up the paper. "You're the operator of record. Why are you outside?" Evan's hand slipped from the lock. Martin waited. He had the patient, slightly weary face of a man accustomed to people believing building codes became optional when flowers and photographers were present. "There's been a misunderstanding," Evan said. "There certainly has," I said. Celeste appeared behind him, still holding the scissors. She wore cream silk, though I had warned her the greenhouse misting system had a personal vendetta against pale fabric. "Martin, how wonderful! We weren't expecting you until 11. "Our appointment was 10, he said. "With Mara," Celeste replied brightly, as if that solved the problem. "But she's running late." All four of us looked at me. I had arrived at 9:20 with the staff schedules, allergen binder, final vendor checks, and a blister forming beneath my left heel because Celeste had called my usual black loafers aggressively managerial. My car was parked beside the loading dock. The basil for the opening lunch was in my trunk because the produce delivery had come short. "I'm right here," I said. Celeste's smile tightened by one stitch. "Yes, now you are." Martin glanced at the locked door, then at the permit. "I need access to the kitchen, dry storage, utility room, employee wash station, and fire control panel. Ms. Rowan needs to accompany me." "We can accompany you," Evan said. Martin folded the permit against his clipboard. "Are either of you the certified operator?" Celeste gave a small laugh. "It's my building." That wasn't my question. I should have enjoyed that. For one clean second, I almost did. Then I saw Evan's expression. Not shame, not anger on my behalf, but calculation. He was trying to determine the smallest thing he could give me that would make the problem disappear. He took a new key from his pocket. The green ribbon around my wrist suddenly felt childish. Evan had tied my old key to it the night we signed the lease, sitting cross-legged on the dusty greenhouse floor between buckets catching rainwater. "First key to our future," he had said. Now he unlocked the door for me like a guard admitting a delivery. Inside, Celeste's guests tried not to stare. Her friend Lenora failed with great enthusiasm. She looked from me to the clipboard and whispered something behind her champagne glass. Celeste recovered first. She touched my elbow and turned me toward the room. "And here is our wonderful consultant, Mara Rowan, who has helped with so many of the little details." The little details included the commercial kitchen, event contracts, staffing model, vendor accounts, liquor application, accessibility review, and the line of credit currently chewing on my personal credit score. "Operator," Martin corrected. Celeste's fingers pressed harder into my sleeve. I smiled at him. "Kitchen's this way. The first 5 minutes of the inspection went perfectly because I had spent 18 months preventing them from going any other way. Hand-washing signs were mounted. Refrigerators held temperature. Sanitizer strips sat in labeled bins. The fire suppression certificate was clipped into the front of the compliance binder, exactly where I had told Evan it needed to remain. The 6th minute went wrong. Martin stopped in front of the rear exit. A decorative brass planter filled with white hydrangeas blocked half the path. I stared at it. That wasn't there last night. "It softened the door," Celeste said. "It's an emergency exit," I said. "It's not supposed to be softened." It looked industrial. That's because people may need to find it while the room is on fire. Evan slid the planter aside. Fixed. Martin wrote something. Celeste looked wounded. Those were $70. I'll alert the fire department, I said. Her eyes sharpened, but Martin's mouth twitched. We continued into dry storage. The shelves were labeled by category and load limit. I had made the labels myself after Evan insisted the staff could feel out where things belonged. 2 cases of sparkling wine sat directly on the floor. Also new, I said. Celeste folded her arms. They arrived this morning. Then they go 6 inches up. There's nowhere to put them. There was until someone filled the beverage shelf with gift bags. The gift bags contained miniature jars of Celeste's rosemary salt, each tied with the same green satin as the ribbon out front. 3 weeks earlier, she had rejected my suggestion to sell house-made pantry items because food labeling was bureaucratic clutter. Now 200 unlabeled jars waited beneath cards reading "A Taste of the Marigold House." Martin picked one up. Where were these prepared? Celeste looked at me as though I'd planted them. Her home kitchen, I believe, Evan said. I turned to him. You knew about these. They're favors, Mara. They're food. They're salt. Martin returned the jar to the shelf. They can't be distributed under this permit. Celeste made a low sound in her throat. It is salt and rosemary. And garlic, I said, reading the handwritten card. It was garlic powder. Martin took another note. Evan gave me the look he used when he wanted me to stop being accurate. I had seen it across Thanksgiving tables, vendor meetings, and the desk at our apartment, while Celeste explained that putting my name beneath his on the wedding invitation was more elegant than using the same line. It was a gentle look. That was what made it dangerous. It suggested I was embarrassing him by noticing what was happening. I carried the wine to the empty equipment shelf while Evan moved the gift bags out to Celeste's car. We passed each other twice without speaking. The inspection took 43 minutes. Martin approved us conditionally, pending removal of the homemade food and written confirmation that the rear exit would remain clear. Before he left, he asked me to initial both corrections. Celeste reached for his pen. He kept it in his hand. Ms. Rowan. The room had gone quiet enough for me to hear ice settle in the champagne buckets. I signed. Martin tore off my copy. Keep this with the operating records and get yourself a key. I had one. His gaze went to the ribbon around my wrist, then to Evan. He didn't ask another question. He had already provided the one I couldn't stop hearing. Why are you outside? As soon as the city car pulled away, Celeste shut the front door. Well, she said, that was needlessly theatrical. Lenora and the cousins had migrated toward the courtyard, taking their glasses with them. The hired photographer pretended to study his camera settings. He was one of Evan's friends and knew exactly when not to have a lens raised. I didn't schedule him for the middle of your ceremony, I said. You scheduled him. For 10. The ceremony was supposed to be at 10:30. We moved it. I gathered that. The mayor's liaison had another engagement. So did the inspector. Celeste placed the ceremonial scissors on the host's stand. You could have handled him without making me look incompetent. I was locked outside for 6 minutes. You changed the lock. The old one stuck. It worked last night. It stuck for me, she said. I looked at Evan. He rubbed the back of his neck, then checked whether the photographer was still close enough to hear. We had to make a quick decision, he said. Mom's insurance agent recommended controlling key access. Her insurance agent recommended taking access from the person named on the permit. Don't turn every sentence into a deposition. Celeste lifted the champagne bottle from its bucket. Today is supposed to be joyful. She poured 3 glasses, handed one to Evan, and carried the other 2 toward the courtyard without offering me either. He watched her leave. Then he lowered his voice. Can we get through lunch before we do this? I laughed once. It came out wrong. What? He asked. You said we. Mara, you were inside, because my mother was cutting the ribbon on her building. And I'm what? You know what you are. I'd love to hear it. His face softened, which was somehow worse than if he had snapped. You're the person who made this possible. Quietly. That's not fair. No, the consultant introduction was very generous. She panicked. She had a speech. The speech sat on the host stand beneath the scissors, 3 cream pages printed in large type. Evan followed my eyes and reached it before I did. That was the unanswered question beneath every other one. Not whether Celeste had planned to erase me, whether Evan had helped her rehearse. Let me see it, I said. It's a speech. You just grabbed it like it contains launch codes. He exhaled and handed it over. Celeste thanked the restoration architect, the contractors, the neighborhood association, Evan's branding work, Lenora's support, and her late husband's belief in beautiful gathering places. My name did not appear. Near the bottom, a handwritten note in Evan's blocky blue ink read, "Pause here for photo with family." I ran my thumb over the words. "I helped her with timing," he said. "When?" "Last night. You told me you were meeting the liquor rep." "I did. Then I came here." "And changed the lock?" He looked toward the courtyard. The answer moved through me slowly, almost politely. He had not arrived this morning and discovered his mother had shut me out. He had stood beside her last night with the new key in his pocket, marking where she should pause, while the family gathered around her. "Why?" I asked. Because she asked me for one thing that felt like hers. I held up the speech. All of it feels like hers. That's exactly the point. She sold her house for this. She's terrified she made a mistake. Every form has your name. Every employee asks for you. Every vendor calls you. She walks into her own building and feels like a guest. So you fixed it by making me one. I was trying to give her a moment. You gave her my place. His jaw tightened. It was a ribbon, Mara. The kitchen timer began shrilling behind us. For a second, neither of us moved. Then instinct won. I pushed through the swinging door and pulled 2 trays of gougères from the convection oven before the bottoms burned. Naomi, our lead server, hurried in carrying a crate of water glasses. "Are we open?" she asked. Through the window, I could see Celeste arranging guests in the courtyard. Evan followed me into the kitchen, still holding his champagne. "We're open," he said. Naomi looked at me. That should have warned him. It should have warned all of us. I set the hot trays on the steel prep table. "We're open." Lunch arrived in pieces. Missing forks, a jammed printer, one guest claiming onions were an allergy after eating half an onion tart. I solved each problem before it grew teeth. Celeste floated between tables accepting compliments. Evan photographed the food, the glass ceiling, his mother touching the restored brick as if the building had risen from her hands. At 2:15, he brought me a plate I hadn't asked for. "You need to eat." "I need a key. It's being copied." "How many did you make?" He hesitated. "Evan. 4. "For whom?" "Mom, me, maintenance, and 1 spare." I looked at him. "The spare is yours. You made yourself a key before the operator. I'm part of this, too." There it was again. Family as a room he entered naturally, while I waited for someone to remember the spare. He set the plate beside my binder. "Please don't make a decision while you're angry." I looked down at the green ribbon around my wrist. Flour had settled into its fibers. The old brass key lay against my pulse, warm from my skin and useless in every door. "What decision do you think I'm making?" He opened his mouth, but his mother called his name from the dining room. Evan glanced toward her voice. Then he went. At 6, I found the family photograph on the Marigold House's social media page. Celeste stood in the center with the scissors angled across her waist. Evan had one arm around her. Lenora and the cousins formed a shining wall on either side, all of them framed by the green ribbon and the glass doors. The caption read, "A Mercer Dream, finally in bloom." I was in the photograph too, if you knew where to look. My reflection appeared in the left door, bent over a crate of glassware. Evan's photography friend had liked the post. I was scraping rosemary salt into a trash bag when Celeste came into the kitchen. The favors had to be destroyed because she refused to take them home after Martin's warning. "What a terrible waste," she said. "You can keep them for personal use." "I made 200. You must use a lot of salt." I was trying to create something special. So was I. She pulled one jar from the nearest gift bag and examined it. "You think I don't appreciate your work?" I tied off the trash bag. "I think you appreciate it most when no one knows it's mine." "That's very dramatic." "Did you ask Evan to keep me outside?" I asked him to keep the ceremony intimate. He changed the lock. My former neighbor's house was robbed by someone who copied a contractor's key. I'm allowed to be careful. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "You take every practical decision as a referendum on your place in this family." She said it with such composure that, for a moment, I heard myself through her ears. Needy, territorial, forever demanding that a building she had purchased prove it loved me. Then I remembered the note in Evan's handwriting. "Where is my new key?" "Evan has it." "Of course he does." Her mouth flattened. "You are marrying him, Mara. His interests and yours are supposed to be the same. That seems to depend on which room we're standing in." Naomi came through the swinging door carrying a tub of rolled silverware, saw us, and immediately pivoted back out. Celeste reached into her handbag and set a check on the prep table. It was my monthly management fee, 7 days late. "There," she said. "We have always honored our agreement. The payment covered roughly half the hours I worked. I had accepted that because Evan and I were supposedly building equity through effort. We had discussed percentages on our couch, in bed, over takeout, and once in the tile aisle of a home improvement store. There was always a reason not to put the number on paper yet. The lender wanted simplicity. Celeste was stressed. The opening came first. I folded the check and slipped it into my binder. "Thank you," I said. She looked almost disappointed that I didn't fight. Evan brought my key at closing. It had a blue plastic tag stamped spare. He held it out between 2 fingers. "Peace offering." A peace offering is something that belongs to the person offering it. It was a joke. I know. He let the key fall into my palm. "Can we go home?" The apartment smelled faintly of coffee grounds and the eucalyptus cleaner I bought because Evan said bleach reminded him of locker rooms. A stack of unopened wedding invitations occupied half the dining table. Celeste had persuaded us to wait until after the Marigold House opening to mail them so the envelopes could include cards for the hotel block she hoped to arrange with a venue partner. I set the spare key beside the invitations. Evan took 2 beers from the refrigerator and opened both. "I'm sorry." I stayed standing. "I should have told you about the lock," he continued, "and the ceremony." "Yes." I thought if Mom had 1 hour where she felt completely surrounded by her people, she'd settle down. Her people. You know what I mean. I'm learning. He pushed a bottle toward me. "Can you please sit?" I did, mostly because my feet hurt. He took the chair across from me. "She's been living out of boxes at Lenora's for 4 months. Every cent she had is in that building. She goes in and everyone treats you like the boss. I am the operator. To the city. That's not the same as owning it." "Thank you for clarifying." He winced. "That came out wrong." It came out exact. He picked at the corner of an invitation. Our names were printed in dark green, mine beneath his in smaller type. I had stopped arguing about it after the 3rd proof. "I'm stuck in the middle," he said. "No, you're moving between sides depending on who's looking." "What do you want me to do? Humiliate her at her opening?" "I wanted you not to humiliate me. I didn't think Martin would show up during the ribbon." "That's your defense?" "No, I mean, I thought you'd come in through the kitchen." "The loading dock." "Mara, come on." "With the basil." His face changed. He had forgotten the basil. For a second, I could see the whole marriage we might have. Evan loving the dinner, Evan complimenting the table, Evan never wondering who had carried the groceries in through the back. I pulled my laptop from my bag. "What are you doing?" "Separating the accounts." He stared at me. "Tonight?" I've been paying restaurant shortages out of our wedding fund. You've been reimbursed. Sometimes $3,086 is still outstanding. That can't be right. I turned the screen toward him. You're welcome to add it. He barely looked. So this is punishment. It's bookkeeping. It's one bad day. It was 18 months that produced one honest day. He stood, beer in hand. I apologized. You acknowledged the lock. What do you want, blood? I want to know what I own. Silence moved into the room. Evan sat again, more slowly. We've talked about that, he said. We've talked around it. I put $26,000 into kitchen equipment. I built the operating plan that got the loan approved. What percentage of Marigold Hospitality do I own? Mom owns the LLC. What percentage am I getting? The agreement isn't finalized. After 18 months. You knew the building had to open first. I knew you said it had to. He rubbed both hands over his face. Can we do this when we're rested? Tomorrow at 9, bring every vendor agreement with my name on it. I don't have all of those. You signed some. On behalf of the company. Then the company should have copies. He looked toward the invitations as if they might intervene. I slept on the couch. At 7, I woke to a blanket tucked around my shoulders and coffee beside the spare key. Evan had drawn a heart on the cardboard sleeve. He did not come at 9. At 9:15, he texted that Celeste's boiler was making a noise. At 10, the liquor distributor called to ask why our opening invoice had not been paid. At 10:20, a refrigeration technician arrived for a service appointment no one had put on my schedule. By noon, I understood the boiler perfectly. I began with the kitchen. Every piece of equipment I had purchased had an invoice. The convection oven, the under-counter dishwasher, 2 induction units, the reach-in refrigerator, the steel prep tables, even the little label printer Evan had teased me for loving. I photographed serial numbers and matched them to receipts. Naomi found me on my knees behind the ice machine. Are we being audited? I'm checking inventory. That sounds like yes, with better shoes. I glanced at her. She was holding a stack of menus against her hip. Did Celeste say something? She asked whether I knew anyone with restaurant management experience. The ice machine hummed between us. What did you say? I said, you have restaurant management experience. Despite everything, I smiled. Naomi didn't. She said someone more aligned with the ownership. When? Yesterday, before the ribbon. That landed with less drama than it deserved. I wrote the ice machine's serial number twice and had to cross one out. Thanks for telling me. Am I getting fired? Not by me. Does that mean yes by somebody else? I honestly don't know. She shifted the menus. I like this job. I know. My last place changed schedules every Thursday at midnight and acted shocked when people had lives on Friday. You post 3 weeks ahead. That's the dream. It's a modest dream. Those are the expensive ones. She nodded toward my clipboard. Tell me if I should start looking. I will. It was the first promise I made that day that I knew I could keep. I sent Evan a list of 14 documents I needed by 5. At 4:48, he emailed 6. 2 were unsigned drafts. 1 was the wrong insurance policy, and another was a wine list. I replied with the 8 missing items. At 6:10, Celeste appeared with the blue folder where we kept paper contracts. Evan says you're holding the restaurant hostage over a photograph. I kept entering produce costs. The restaurant is serving dinner. You frightened Naomi. You offered her job to someone else. I asked a harmless question. Before the ribbon. She sat across from me in the tiny office. The room had originally been a gardener's supply closet, and the old brass hooks were still mounted along one wall. My coat hung from one. Celeste's cream silk jacket occupied 3. You're indispensable right now, she said. I've told Evan that many times. Right now. Every business needs succession planning. We opened yesterday. And yesterday demonstrated that you don't separate your personal feelings from your professional obligations. I stopped typing. She went on. Martin would have approved us without that display. He needed my signature. He needed a signature, mine, because that is how Evan structured the application, for you. The words were meant to make the permit sound like a favor, some paper tiara he had arranged to keep me content. I closed the laptop. The lender required a qualified operator, and you were available. I rebuilt my entire life around this place. We all made sacrifices. You sold a house and bought an asset. Evan worked on branding under his own company's contract. I paid for equipment inside a business I don't own. Her gaze shifted to the inventory pages beside me. You chose to contribute, she said, based on what your son promised. Then your disagreement is with him. That surprised me, not because it was kind, but because it was true. She pushed the blue folder across the desk. We have 112 people booked for Sunday brunch. I expect you to handle it. Is there a new manager starting? Her chin lifted. I am exploring options. Then until you replace me, I'll perform the work covered by my operating agreement. 40 hours a week, no personal purchases, no unpaid event planning, no vendor guarantees. You can't simply change the terms. I just described the written terms. We've never counted hours. I started this morning. Something moved behind her eyes. She had expected tears, maybe shouting. A number was harder to dismiss. She rose and collected her jacket from the hooks. This family has welcomed you for 5 years. I looked at the space where it had hung. Yesterday, I couldn't get through the door. After she left, I opened the blue folder. The missing contracts still weren't there. Over the next 10 days, the marigold house remained beautiful from the dining room. Hydrangeas opened in bowls. Sunlight moved across the old tile. Guests photographed their coffee beneath the ironwork and called the room magical. Behind the swinging door, magic became invoices. On Thursday morning, Audrey from Field Finch stood in the loading bay holding 6 buckets of café au lait dahlias. Last delivery, she said. I thought we had flowers through October. You had flowers through October. I understood before she explained. Audrey's discounted standing order came from the arrangement we had built over 3 years. She supplied my events at wholesale, and I handled 2 large corporate dinners each quarter using her studio as preferred florist. Celeste had told Audrey future event inquiries would go through the ownership team. I'm sorry, I said. I'm not. Audrey looked past me at the Marigold house. Retail rate is $800 a week. Celeste said she'd think about it. By lunch, Celeste had replaced the dahlias with grocery store carnations and moved them away from the windows so guests wouldn't see the plastic support grids. On Friday, the liquor distributor put us on payment upon delivery. Evan called me from the courtyard. You've known Graham for years. I do. Can you talk to him? About what? Extending the account until the private event deposits clear. His company extended credit because I personally guaranteed the first 3 orders. So guarantee this one. No, he lowered his voice. We have a wedding tomorrow. So pay him. Mom's transfer won't clear until Monday. Then use the company card. It's close to the limit. I let that sit between us. You really mean to watch this place fail, he said. I mean to stop pretending its ability to pay a bill is my personal emergency. He hung up. 20 minutes later, Celeste paid Graham from her savings. The wine arrived. The wedding happened. The room looked beautiful. On Sunday, half the brunch tables waited 40 minutes for food because Celeste had removed my laminated opening routines from the kitchen wall. She said the sheets looked cheap. The prep cook missed the count for hollandaise. The coffee station opened without decaf, and the host scheduled all large parties within the same half hour. At 11:10, Naomi found the routines in my desk and taped them back up with thick silver duct tape. Celeste peeled them down. Naomi put them up again. They stayed. That evening, the staff began texting me from their personal numbers, missing allergy notes, changed shifts, Celeste's instruction to hold cooked potatoes in a warming drawer far longer than our safety limit. I answered the safety questions and forwarded everything else to the ownership email. At home, Evan stopped mentioning the wedding invitations. The box remained on the dining table, unopened, my name still waiting beneath his. Then a caterer named Vince called while I was brushing my teeth. "I got your email," he said. "I didn't email you." "About releasing the equipment lien once the event minimum is met." Toothpaste burned the corner of my mouth. "What lien?" He went quiet. Papers rustled. "The supplemental security agreement," he said carefully. "Evan said you approved it." I gripped the sink. "Send me everything." The email arrived before we hung up. Attached beneath the catering partnership was a single page listing my convection oven, dishwasher, refrigerator, and both induction units as security against missed event commissions. At the bottom was Evan's signature. Above it, in his handwriting, were 3 words: "Approved by Mara." I read it 3 times, waiting for the words to become less plain. Evan came out of the bedroom in sweatpants, rubbing his hair with a towel. "Who was on the phone?" I turned the laptop toward him. He stopped rubbing. "That's not what it looks like." "Excellent. What does it look like?" He dropped the towel on a chair and leaned over the screen. His eyes moved down the agreement with the confidence of someone hoping familiarity could pass for innocence. "It's security language," he said. "I can read. Vince requires it for preferred catering partners. My equipment, the restaurant's equipment. I bought it. For the restaurant. With my money. We're getting married." He said it as though marriage were a solvent that dissolved every boundary except the ones protecting his mother. "You told Vince I approved this." "You did approve the catering partnership. I approved his company for off-site events. I didn't approve attaching my property to Celeste's commissions. The equipment isn't going anywhere. That depends on whether your mother meets the event minimum. She will. Then why hide this?" "I didn't hide it. You wrote my name instead of asking me. I wrote that you approved it because you approved the larger deal. Vince added the attachment later. I had people waiting. It was 2 days before opening. So you made a quick decision." He heard it too. His shoulders dropped. "Mara, did you know this was one of the documents I kept asking for?" I didn't remember the supplemental page. "You remembered the wine list. That folder was chaos. My name makes chaos feel organized, apparently." He sat at the dining table and pressed his palms into his eyes. The unopened invitations shifted beneath his elbow. "I was trying to keep everything moving," he said. "Do you have any idea how many times I've been asked to choose between you and Mom this month?" I stared at him. He lowered his hands. "That sounded bad." It sounded honest. "I mean, every decision turns into a loyalty test, only because you keep spending my loyalty." He looked tired. I hated that I still noticed. I hated the part of me that wanted to get him water, fold the towel, lower my voice because the walls were thin. Instead, I opened the top drawer of the entry table and took out the small velvet ring box. His face changed before I even touched my left hand. "Don't." The ring resisted at my knuckle. My fingers had swollen from the hot kitchen. I worked it loose, set it inside the box, and closed the lid. "You're doing this at midnight over contract wording?" "I'm doing this because you stood at a locked door and explained why I belonged outside. This page is just the same door in writing." He didn't take the box. I set it on top of the invitations. "I love you," he said. "I know." "Then how can you be this cold?" My laugh broke in the middle. I'm trying very hard not to be. He reached across the table. I stepped back before he could touch me. "If I fix the agreement, will you put the ring back on?" "You can't fix it into being something you didn't do." His mouth tightened. "So that's it?" "I'm staying at Audrey's tonight." "You already arranged that?" "I asked her while you were in the shower." That was fast. I've gotten good at logistics. Audrey lived above her flower studio in a narrow apartment that smelled of stems, damp paper, and whatever soup she forgot on the stove. She gave me a towel, a glass of bourbon, and exactly one question. "Couch or guest room?" "Couch." "The guest room has boxes." "Couch." "Good. I didn't want to move the boxes." In the morning, Vince met me at a diner near his commissary kitchen. He wore a fleece vest with his company logo and looked genuinely miserable. "I like Evan," he said. "Everyone likes Evan." He said the equipment was part of the business capitalization. It wasn't transferred to the business. I slid copies of the invoices across the table. Vince studied them beside his coffee. "This is a mess." "Yes. I can release the listed assets, but if Marigold doesn't hit the minimum, I need another form of security. That's between you and Marigold. It became between me and you when you signed the vendor approval. I approved you as a caterer. That page doesn't pledge my equipment. You initialed the master agreement. Before the supplement existed." He tapped his spoon against the saucer. "I believe you. That doesn't make my accountant disappear." We spent an hour finding a way neither of us liked. Vince would remove my assets. Marigold Hospitality would prepay part of the remaining event minimum or lose preferred partner status. He gave them 5 business days. Celeste called in 4 minutes. "You had no authority to renegotiate my contract. I renegotiated my property out of it." Evan says it was a misunderstanding. Evan didn't misunderstand where to write my name. "You are threatening relationships we need." Then prepay Vince. From what? There it was. I sat in Audrey's delivery van with buckets rattling behind me. "You own the building." "The building has a mortgage. You sold your house to fund the down payment and construction. Do you think I have piles of cash sitting around?" I think I should have known the business couldn't cover 5 days of operating costs. It can, if people stop creating emergencies. She hung up. By afternoon, Evan had removed his contributions from the wedding savings account. The alert appeared on my phone while I was checking a freezer log. "Transfer completed," followed by a balance that no longer covered the restaurant reimbursements I had been waiting for. His text came seconds later. "Until we decide whether there is a wedding, I'm protecting my portion." I called him. "You took $12,000. I took what I put in. "You agreed the restaurant would reimburse me through that account. That was when the restaurant was part of our future. It was always your mother's asset. You didn't seem to mind when you thought you'd benefit." The words were ugly enough to surprise both of us. He went quiet, then said, "I'm sorry." I looked at the steel prep table in front of me. My invoice was taped beneath its edge for the inventory photograph. "You keep apologizing after you find out how far you were willing to go." "Mara, wait." I ended the call. Celeste hired Dennis Klein the following Monday. He had managed hotel restaurants, held the required city certifications, and wore dark suits that made everyone else feel underdressed. Martin reviewed his paperwork and amended the permit without ceremony. My name was no longer necessary. I had expected relief. Instead, I stood beside the framed permit and felt foolish for ever believing a line of government print could make me harder to erase. Dennis shook my hand. "Celeste says you've built a strong system." "She says that now?" "She said you're having a personal disagreement." "Of course." He glanced toward the dining room. "I don't get involved in family. You just took a job here." That earned the first real smile I saw from him. We agreed to a 10-day transition. I showed him the vendor calendar, staffing ratios, event diagrams, and the peculiar temperature swing in the West refrigerator. He listened carefully. That made it harder to dislike him. Naomi accepted Celeste's offer to become floor manager. She told me in the gardener's closet, now Dennis's office. My coat had been moved to a hook near the loading dock. "It's more money," she said. "I understand." My rent went up. "You don't have to explain." "I feel like I do." "You don't." She stared at the old brass hooks. "Dennis wants to change the schedules to weekly. Then make sure your new salary includes Thursday night miracles." She gave me a hurt look. It was deserved. "I'm sorry," I said. "That was cheap." "A little. Take the promotion." "I already did." That hurt more than I expected, but she hadn't locked me outside. She'd been offered a door and walked through it. I was learning the difference. On my last transition day, the West refrigerator failed. The technician traced the problem to a control board he had warned us about before opening. Celeste refused the repair, saying the warranty should cover it. The warranty company disagreed because construction dust had clogged the vents. By noon, cold air leaked from the door seals and $600 worth of cream sat in rolling coolers. Dennis ordered the repair. Celeste stopped payment on the check. 3 days later, the refrigeration company called me. The original purchase and service account carried my personal guarantee. "I'm no longer the operator," I said. "That doesn't remove the guarantee," the account manager replied. The balance was $4,860, including the replacement board and emergency labor. I could dispute the charges, let them go to collections, or pay and pursue reimbursement from Marigold Hospitality. I called Evan before doing anything. "Tell her to release the payment." "I have. Try again." She thinks Dennis exceeded his authority. The refrigerator was dying. She wanted a second quote. "With food inside?" "I agree with you." It was the first time he had said that plainly, and it changed nothing. "Will the company reimburse me?" I asked. "Yes." "Put it in writing." A long pause. "I can't authorize that without her." "Then you don't agree in any way that matters." I paid the balance from the savings account where I had planned to keep the last of my kitchen expansion money. Then I sent Celeste, Evan, and Dennis a formal notice. I was terminating my operating agreement, removing my personal information from every permit, and withdrawing all equipment I owned after 30 days, unless Marigold purchased it at the documented depreciated value. Dennis called first. "That will gut the kitchen." "I know. Can we buy it?" "That's in the notice." "Celeste says your prices are inflated. They're based on the invoices and standard depreciation," I told her. For the first time, his polished voice sounded strained. Celeste's response arrived as a letter from a general practice attorney in Lenora's social circle. It accused me of abandoning the business, overstated the company's interest in my equipment, and proposed paying me less than a third of its value over 2 years. The attorney I hired worked above a tax office and drank vending machine coffee during our meeting. She did not promise victory. She said the receipts helped. The informal promises did not, and litigation could cost enough to make being right feel remarkably similar to losing. I accepted a smaller lump sum for the equipment, full repayment of the refrigeration bill, and a clean release from every operating obligation. The agreement also required Marigold to remove my name from vendor accounts. Celeste signed 2 days before the deadline. The repayment cleared. That was the first money the Marigold house had ever returned to me without making me beg. I collected my personal knives, notebooks, label printer, and the framed food handler certificate Celeste had hung behind a ficus. Dennis carried the box to Audrey's van. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't write the script." I did think I could manage her. "Most people do for about 2 weeks." He laughed, then looked back through the glass doors. "She's hosting an anniversary gala next month. Her wedding anniversary, 200 guests, live music, full dinner. That room seats 140 comfortably." I said that, and she called comfort a limiting mindset. I closed the van door. Evan was waiting outside Audrey's apartment that night. He held the velvet ring box in one hand and my old brass key in the other, the faded green ribbon looped around his fingers. "You left this at home," he said. "The key doesn't work." "I know." He offered me the ring box. I took the key instead. His fingers closed around the ring. "Dennis resigned," he said. I looked up. He found a ventilation problem in the kitchen. Mom told him to keep it quiet until after the gala. He refused. "When?" "This afternoon." "The gala is Friday." "I know." He swallowed and looked at the useless key in my palm. "We need you for one night." "No." Evan blinked as if he hadn't prepared for a one-syllable answer. "Mara, listen to what I'm asking." I did. "It's one dinner. It's 200 dinners in a kitchen with a ventilation problem. Dennis said it needs repair. He didn't say the building is going to explode." "What exactly did he say?" Evan glanced toward Audrey's dark studio windows. "The makeup air unit isn't pulling correctly." "And your mother told him to conceal that from the city." She told him not to overreact before we had a second opinion. He resigned. He and Mom had other disagreements. Dennis wore a suit to count salad forks. That man did not resign because of other disagreements. Evan squeezed the ring box until the velvet creased beneath his thumb. The gala matters to her. Everything matters to her when she wants me to absorb the risk. She's honoring my father. With a full bar and a jazz trio, it would have been their anniversary. That quieted me. Celeste's late husband had sketched the first rough idea for a conservatory restaurant on a paper napkin. She kept it framed in her bedroom. Evan had told me they used to drive past the abandoned greenhouse and talk about what it could become. It was a real grief. That didn't make it a permit. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm still not doing it." "You don't have to come back permanently. Sign on as operator through Friday, supervise dinner, and walk away Saturday. Is the ventilation repaired? We have someone looking at it tomorrow. Is there money to pay him?" His silence answered. "You'll be paid," he said. $5,000. By whom? The company, which couldn't pay for refrigerator service. I'll cover it. You just removed your money from our wedding account. His jaw shifted. I can get it. I'm not interested. What if Mom gives you the title you wanted? I looked at the ring in his hand, then at him. Which title do you think I wanted? Operating partner. Publicly. We can amend the website, the materials, everything. What percentage? We can work that out. You came here to buy one night with the same promise you've been making for 18 months. I came here to save something my family built. There was the word again. I held out the old brass key. Then take this. He didn't. It's yours, he said. It opens nothing. It meant something once. So did the ring. I went upstairs and left him beneath the burned-out light over Audrey's side door. Naomi called at 7 the next morning. Do I still report to Dennis if he quit? You report to whoever signs your checks. That's Celeste. Then Celeste. She made Raoul acting kitchen manager. Raoul's a banquet chef. He says that too. I sat up on Audrey's couch, scattering florist catalogs across the floor. Has anyone turned on the cooking line? Celeste wants a gala menu test at noon. Tell Raoul to check whether the hood is drawing before he lights anything. He checked. He held up a strip of receipt paper and it hung straight down. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. The makeup air brings fresh air in so the exhaust hood can pull smoke and heat out. If it isn't moving, the line stays off. That's what Dennis said. Then why are you calling me? Naomi was quiet. Because when you said a thing, it stayed said, she answered. I stood and began folding the blanket. I don't work there. I know. You're floor manager. I know. You have the authority to refuse unsafe service. Celeste says I have authority over servers. Then tell the servers they're not taking food from that kitchen. That could get me fired. Yes. She breathed into the phone. I hate that answer. So do I. At 8:30, I received an email from Martin. Dennis had notified the city that he was no longer employed at the Marigold House and had reported an unresolved ventilation issue. Martin wanted confirmation that I had fully withdrawn as operator. I sent him the termination agreement and permit amendment. He replied, "Thank you. We'll handle it from here." At 11, Celeste came into Audrey's studio carrying the framed napkin sketch. Audrey was wiring eucalyptus into an arrangement. She looked at Celeste, looked at me, and said, I have deliveries. You don't, I said. I suddenly do. She took her coat and left us among buckets of white roses. Celeste placed the frame on the work table between us. The napkin inside had yellowed around the edges. A few blue lines formed tables beneath a curved glass roof. Evan told you about this, she said. Yes. Thomas drew it after our 25th anniversary dinner. The restaurant was dreadful, but the room had climbing vines. He said someday we would build a place where the room and the meal were both worth remembering. I touched a fallen eucalyptus leaf but didn't pick it up. He would have understood your wanting to honor that. Would he have understood locking out the operator? Pain crossed her face, quick and clean. Then she put it away. I handled that badly. You planned it. I planned one family photograph. You changed the lock the night before. Because every time I entered that building, someone asked me to find you. Do you understand what that felt like? Yes. She waited, perhaps expecting more. It felt like you needed me, I said. You hated needing me more than you wanted the place to work. I wanted room to be its owner. You had the deed, the office, the final word, and every check. I wanted a key. You wanted equity, because I put in money and work based on Evan's promises. She looked toward the front windows. He promises the future when the present becomes uncomfortable. It was the truest thing she had ever said to me. And you let him, I said. So did you. That was true, too. She opened her handbag and removed a typed agreement. It named me interim operator through the gala, promised a $5,000 consulting fee, and stated that the parties intended to negotiate a future partnership in good faith. I read it once and slid it back. No. You haven't considered it. I spent 5 years considering good faith. Her shoulders stiffened. 200 people have made plans. You accepted their deposits after Dennis told you about the ventilation. He became negative from the moment you left. Some men cannot function without a woman organizing them. I nearly smiled. Dennis would be devastated to hear you've noticed gender. The repair company can't get the motor until Monday. We can use portable fans. No, you could revise the menu. Cold courses, induction stations in the courtyard. The courtyard isn't permitted for cooking, and my induction units belong to the company now. Your company. I am offering you a way back. You're offering me responsibility without power. Again. Her hand closed around the frame. I won't lose my anniversary in my own building because you need to prove a point. This is what you still don't understand. I don't need you to lose. I need to stop losing for you. She left the agreement on the work table. She took the framed napkin with her. Friday evening, Naomi texted me a photograph of the kitchen line. Raoul stood beneath the silent hood, arms crossed. Behind him, portable fans pointed toward an open service door. Extension cords ran across the tile beneath rubber mats. On the prep table sat trays of uncooked beef and 80 portions of crab. Celeste says, full menu. Raoul says he walks if she lights burners. I called Martin. He already knew. Dennis had sent photographs from his final day, and the ventilation company had confirmed the failed unit. Martin and the fire marshal were on their way. Don't go into the kitchen, he told me. I'm not there. Good, keep it that way. I lasted 11 minutes. Audrey tossed me her van keys without asking. Traffic around the Marigold house crawled because a valet stand occupied half the block. Guests in evening clothes moved beneath the glass awning while a saxophone played in the courtyard. The doors opened easily for everyone now. I remained outside. Through the glass, I saw Celeste in dark green silk greeting guests beneath an enlarged print of the napkin sketch. Evan stood near the host station in a suit I had helped him choose for our rehearsal dinner. He saw me and came out. You changed your mind? No? His hope disappeared. Then why are you here? For Naomi and Raoul. They work for Mom. They work in a kitchen. He looked toward the street as Martin's city car pulled up behind the fire marshal. You called them. Dennis reported the problem when he resigned. The repair company confirmed it. But you called tonight. Yes. He stared at me. You couldn't let us get through dinner. You still think dinner is something I do to you. Martin joined us with his clipboard under one arm. He greeted me, then looked at Evan. Who is the operator on duty? We're in transition, Evan said. That isn't a person. My mother owns the establishment. Martin looked through the doors. Please bring her out. Celeste came carrying the interim agreement, my unsigned line visible at the bottom. Mara is here, she said. She isn't your operator, Martin replied. She has agreed to supervise tonight. No, I haven't, I said. Celeste held the paper out to me with a pen. For one strange second, the four of us stood in almost the same places as opening morning. The green ribbon was gone. The permit display beside the door now listed Dennis Klein, whose resignation notice sat on Martin's clipboard. "Sign it," Celeste whispered. "We can discuss everything else tomorrow." Martin took the agreement from her, glanced at it, and gave it back. Even if Ms. Rowan accepted, it would not resolve the ventilation order. "We're using fans." The fire marshal looked through the door at the cords. "You're using extension cords. For fans. In a wet service area." Celeste's composure thinned. "The guests are already seated." "You may continue the event without kitchen or bar service," Martin said. "Any food prepared off-site by a licensed caterer can be served. That's all." Our caterer is us. Not tonight. Behind the doors, the jazz trio kept playing. A server carried an empty tray toward the dining room, then turned around when Naomi shook her head. Celeste looked at me. "Are you satisfied?" "No." The answer surprised her. "I wanted it to work," I said. "I wanted it so much that you both started treating that desire like a utility you could leave running." Evan stepped between us, facing his mother. "Stop blaming her." Celeste stared at him. "The unit failed," he said. "Dennis quit. Mara warned us. This isn't hers." It was the first time he had defended me before checking what it would cost him. It cost him immediately. Celeste's face went still. "Then go arrange the refunds." He flinched. The valet began bringing cars around. Guests left in small, awkward groups while the band played through its contracted first set. Raoul loaded the uncooked food into refrigerated vans. Naomi organized staff to call every reservation and process refunds. Lenora stood beside the anniversary sketch, holding Celeste's purse and refusing to make eye contact with anyone. I helped Audrey find enough refrigerator space for the flowers she had supplied at full retail rate. By midnight, the Marigold house was empty except for the Mercers, the staff, and several hundred untouched candles. Evan found me near the loading dock. "I meant what I said," he told me. "I know." "I should have said it at the ribbon." "Yes." "I thought keeping her happy would protect everything. It protected you from one difficult conversation at a time." He looked down at his hands. "Is there any version where we fix this?" There were versions. I could see them because I had spent years producing versions for him. A better schedule, a revised budget, a softer answer for Celeste, another date for our wedding. "Not one I can live in," I said. He nodded once. Then he went back inside to help his mother count the cost. The Marigold house stayed closed for 7 weeks. The ventilation repair itself took 4 days once Celeste paid the deposit. The rest took longer. Gala refunds emptied the operating account. Vendors required payment on delivery. 3 private events moved elsewhere, and the lender demanded a plan showing experienced management and enough cash to survive the season. Celeste tried 2 consultants. One lasted 9 days. The other sent her an invoice after their first meeting and declined the second. By winter, she was negotiating with Harbor Table, a local hospitality group that ran 4 restaurants and an event space. They offered to buy a controlling interest, assume part of the debt, and keep Celeste as a minority owner with no role in daily operations. She rejected them twice. The third time, she called me. "I gave them your number," she said. "Why?" "They asked who built the operating system. I waited." "I told them," she said. Harbor Table offered me a salary and the same title Evan had dangled outside Audrey's apartment. I declined. Their managing partner, Lila Chen, asked what would make me reconsider. I gave her a number, a real ownership percentage that vested in writing, authority over operations, repayment terms for any future capital I contributed, and a board process that did not turn family discomfort into business policy. "That's a lot," Lila said. "Yes, I respect it." "That's cheaper than saying yes." She laughed, then sent the terms to her attorney. Celeste resisted my equity, more than she resisted losing control. In the end, the choice was not between sharing the Marigold house with me and keeping it for herself. It was between sharing it and watching the lender sell it without caring whose dream had been drawn on a napkin. She signed. Evan and I ended the apartment lease. He took the invitations, the velvet box, and the photographs. I took my coffee maker, my books, and the old brass key on its faded green ribbon. He stopped doing marketing for the Marigold House. The first campaign, under Harbor Table, used photographs of the building, the food, and the staff. No family portrait appeared. On reopening morning, I stood beneath the same glass awning while Lila mounted the new permit inside the door. My name was listed as operator. This time, it was backed by a signed ownership agreement in my office, a salary that did not depend on favors, and a key made before the invitations. There was no satin stretched across the entrance. We had breakfast reservations in 20 minutes, and Naomi was inside arguing with a coffee grinder. She had stayed through the sale and negotiated a raise before accepting my offer to remain floor manager. I took the old brass key from my pocket. The green ribbon had darkened, where flour, sweat, and 18 months of handling had worked into its fibers. With the kitchen shears, I cut it away. I slipped the key onto a plain steel ring beside the new one, opened the door, and felt the lock turn easily in my hand.